Sink rate. Pull up.
Before watching the video, can you please save a little bit time, like and subscribe to SkypluS have mover to increase?
On March 21, 2022, China Eastern Airlines Flight 5735 domestic passenger flight in China, from Changshui International Airport, Kunming to Guangzhou Baiyun International Airport, Guangzhou in China. With a distance of 665 miles, it will take 2 hours and 30 minutes to fly. Boeing 737-89P aircraft with registration number B1791. The aircraft was manufactured at the Boeing Renton factory in Washington, United States in 2015 and first flew on June 5, 2015. The original owner was Yamasa Company Limited, and it was subsequently leased to China Eastern Airlines Company on June 22, 2015. The aircraft is powered by two CFM56-7B26E turbofan engines manufactured by CFM International. By the time of the accident, the plane was 6 years and 10 months old and had flown 8,986 flights with a total flight time of 18,239 hours. The airline reported 123 passengers and 9 crew members to be on the flight, for a total of 132 people. All were Chinese. The flight crew consisted of 3 pilots, 5 flight attendants and an in-flight security guard. The captain Yang Hongda, 32-year-old, had been employed as a Boeing 737 pilot since January 2018, with a total of 6,709 flight hours. The first officer Zhang Jingping, 59-year-old, was amongst China's most experienced commercial pilots, with 31,769 flight hours, and was a flight instructor for China Eastern, having trained more than 100 captains. He had been awarded the honorary title of a meritorious pilot of civil aviation in 2011. The second officer, 27-year-old, as observer Ni Gongtao, with a total of 556 flight hours, was aboard to fulfill training duties. The plane departed from Changshui International Airport, Kunming at 13:15 local time. 4 hours before the accident, Wuzhou Weather Bureau issued a warning about strong convective winds.
V1. Rotate. Positive brake. Gear up.
After the flight took off, it flew at an altitude of about 29,100 feet and entered the Kunming, Guangzhou FIR at 2:17 p.m. At 14:20, the flight suddenly began to descend, and at the same time the airspeed began to decrease. The ground control staff called the crew several times, but did not receive any response.
Sink rate. Pull up. Sink rate. 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 Rate. Sink rate. Pull up. Sink rate. Sink rate. Pull up. Sink rate. Sink. Pull up. Sink rate. Sink. Pull up. Sink rate.
According to ADSB data recorded, the plane descended suddenly to about 7,400 feet, then continued to climb to about 8,600 feet and then continued to descend, and the last data recorded at 1400 hours, 22 shows an elevation of about 3,200 feet.
Pull up. Sink rate. Sink. Pull up. Sink rate. Sink. Pull up.
The plane crashed in the mountains of Dang District, Wuzhou, Guangxi. A surveillance camera installed by a local mining company about 1 kilometer from where the incident occurred captured the moment the passenger plane crashed, showing the plane descending at a nearly 90-degree angle, nearly as vertical. The scene of the accident was also filmed, showing the wreckage and fire. Many smaller pieces of debris were scattered around the area. Then on March 26, Xinhua News Agency reported that after many days of searching, Chinese officials announced that all 132 people on board the Boeing 737-800 aircraft number MU-5735 of China Eastern Airlines were dead. It is the third deadliest air crash in China after China Southern Airlines Flight 3943 and China Northwest Airlines Flight 2303, the deadliest air accident in China Eastern Airlines history, and the deadliest plane crash in 2022. Local authorities dispatched 450 firefighters to the scene of the accident. Wet weather and the challenging accessibility of the crash site hampered the recovery process. Heavy rain partially filled the impact crater with water which had to be pumped away. Recovery activities were suspended on the morning of March 23 because of the threat of landslides. The remains of all 132 aircraft occupants were positively identified by March 29. As of March 31, 2022, at least 49,117 pieces of airplane wreckage had been recovered. The recovered cockpit voice recorder, March 23, 2022. Rescue crews initially had difficulty accessing the site because of the forest fire which was extinguished by 1725. By evening, 117 out of 650 dispatched rescuers were nearby and headed to the site from 3 directions. Aircraft wreckage and victims' belongings were found, but no signs of human remains were detected. On April 20, 2022, CAAC released a preliminary report regarding the accident, stating that there was no abnormality in the radio communication and control command between the crew and the Air Traffic Control Department before deviating from the cruise altitude. It was reported that the plane was airworthy, up to date on inspections, that all personnel met requirements, that weather was fine, and that no dangerous goods were found. Both aircraft recorders were severely damaged and were sent to Washington for further investigation. Early reports of the aircraft's flight data recorder pointed towards a deliberate crash from the cockpit. There were no distress or mayday calls from the cockpit to air traffic control nor any answers to the attempts from air traffic control and nearby aircraft to make contact with the aircraft. Flight controls were pushed to put the plane into a dive. This led the investigation toward the pilot or the possibility of a cockpit breach. China Eastern noted the unlikeliness of anyone breaching the cockpit, as an emergency code was not broadcast. Citing flight recorder data showing that the landing gear and flaps had evidently not been engaged or deployed during the aircraft's descent, which would indicate the pilots attempting an emergency descent or landing. China Eastern established a hotline for family members and announced that its Boeing 737-800 fleet would be grounded for inspection until the investigation was completed. Most of the airline's 737-800s eventually returned to service in April 2022. Nearly 89% of all China Eastern flights were cancelled on March 22. News concerning the crash was heavily censored in China. Articles and social media posts that asked more detailed questions were deleted by censors. Faced with mounting pressure, officials eventually provided information on the maintenance history of the plane, the pilot's flight experience, and weather conditions at the time of the crash. Boeing offered its condolences to the families of the victims. On U.S. stock markets, Boeing shares initially fell by 7.8% and China Eastern shares by 8.2% after the incident. On the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, China Eastern shares dropped by 6.5%. As of March 2024, no final report has been released.
Thank you for watching the video. If you have an idea of the rank, please comment below to everyone discuss.